Okay, so boys and girls, we are about to start chapter 7 in our Story of the World textbook called Hammurabi and the Babylonians. So I am so excited. This is probably my favorite chapter in the whole book. So our first section is called Hammurabi's Code. You can probably tell that Mesopotamia was not a very peaceful place to live. City-states fought each other. Powerful leaders tried to build empires by conquering other city-states. Sometimes the empires lasted for a long time. Sometimes they collapsed in just a few years, and then another powerful leader tried to take over. The people of Mesopotamia lived with war all the time. Sometimes they stayed inside their city walls and hoped that they would be safe. But sometimes they fled. They would travel to another place hoping to avoid trouble. If you remember from chapter 6 when we learned about Abram's father and how they fled for fear of war. So around 1792 BC, before Christ, a king named Hammurabi inherited the throne of Babylon from his father. So remember, inherited is it's passed down. So Hammurabi in 1972, sorry, not 74, he inherited the throne from his father in Babylon. So Babylon was a city near Kish. Remember, Kish is the first city that Sargon conquered. So it's right near Kish in Mesopotamia. And at first, Hammurabi only ruled a small area of land around his own city. But soon, he began to conquer some of the other smaller cities around him. He convinced the kings of other cities to swear allegiance to him. So that means they're kind of like on the same team if, they would promise to follow his lead. And soon he ruled over the whole southern part of Mesopotamia. This area was called Babylonia, after the city of Babylon. So, the whole southern part of Mesopotamia, he conquered it now. He was in charge of it. It's called Babylonia. So here, we're going to go to our map to find that on the map and see where it is. So, you will need your red crayon. I already wrote my name and date on the top. And here, you'll notice we have, this is Mesopotamia, the area of Mesopotamia. We have the Euphrates River, the Tigris River, which you can trace in blue at some point. I'm just going to do a really quick trace so as not to take too long. But you can do this as I speak later if you fall behind. So, remember, here's Kish, where Sargon was from. And then Babylon, the area, the city-state that Hammurabi is first king of, inherited from his father. We're going to circle Babylon. That's where he began. And so this is all of Mesopotamia. He started conquering all the little city-states around here. And so soon, he was in charge of the whole southern part of Mesopotamia. So everywhere within this little line, you're going to lightly shade red. He conquered, and you see the word Babylonia in all capital letters right there? This is the area that Hammurabi was in charge of. Now, while you're listening, if you'd like, you can use your green to shade in all the other grass areas, the blue to shade in color in the sea, bodies of water, but I'm going to keep reading. But you can go ahead and do that if you'd like. And where are we? So Hammurabi didn't want people to obey him just because his army was strong. So remember, Sargon was a military dictator. He forced his army to make people obey him, and so they obeyed him out of fear. But Sargon didn't work but Hammurabi didn't work that way. Hammurabi wanted everyone to follow him. I'll keep reading. he wanted his empire to be governed by just laws. He believed that the chief god of Babylon, named Marduk, made him king so that he could treat people fairly. In one of his letters, Hammurabi calls himself the reverent, God-fearing prince, so the respectful, God-fearing prince. He says that his job as king is to make justice appear in the land, to destroy the evil and the wicked, so that the strong might not oppress the weak. So what that means is he wanted just laws, so fair laws, and he wanted everyone to be treated fairly, and he wanted everyone to be equal. So not the rich people more powerful, not the poor people weaker. The rich and the poor had to obey the same laws. So Hammurabi really wanted things to be fair. Hammurabi wanted people to follow his laws because they were right, not just because soldiers were making them obey. He also wanted his whole empire to follow the same laws and rules. So Hammurabi wrote all of the laws that he thought were fair, and he then had them carved into stone. It was on a monument that showed him getting the laws from the sun god. So his laws were carved into a stone monument, and this monument was called the Code of Hammurabi. And so this monument, which is now over my light switch, is a big tall monument, and at the top there was a little carving of him receiving the laws from the sun god, because that's how he imagined he got them. And this is a close-up of that image on the top of the monument, him receiving the laws from the sun god. And those laws, remember, they didn't write in the English alphabet we know. The laws were all written in hieroglyphs, markings, carved into the stone, but our historians, our archaeologists were able to dig that up and discover what those laws meant. So these laws, the Code of Hammurabi, is the first written set of laws that we know of. They were unusual because everyone had to follow them. Rich people, poor people, soldiers, farmers, merchants, and even kings. Here are some of the laws in the Code of Hammurabi. Do you think these are fair? Why or why not? So, I'm excited to share with you some of the laws, some of the codes that Hammurabi came up with that he thought were fair. Remember, we're talking about a time 4,000 years ago. So, these laws might not be something that you understand or things that you're like, that's crazy, why would they do that? But remember, this is a long time ago, things were a little different, but these were things that Hammurabi thought was fair. So, our first law. If someone cuts down a tree on someone else's land, he will pay for it. Do you think that's fair? Let's say you went into someone else's backyard and you cut down a tree on their property. Do you think it's fair if you had to pay for it? Another law. If someone is careless when watering his fields and he floods someone else's fields, then he will pay for the grain he has ruined. So, if you have a lot of crops, a big field you're planting, and you rely on these grains, whatever you're growing, so let's say you're watering them and you accidentally flood your neighbor's field, do you think it's fair if you have to, you have to pay for the grain he's ruined? So you have to pay this person whose field you flooded? Do you think that's fair? Next one. If a man so I don't have pictures for these next two, but listen carefully. If a man wants to throw his son out of the house, he has to go before a judge and say, "I don't want my son to live in my house anymore." The judge will find out the reasons, and if the reasons are not good, the man can't throw his son out. That one's a little funny. And the next one I also don't have a picture for, but just listen, these ones are interesting. If the son has done some great evil to his father must forgive him the first time. But if he has done something evil twice, his father can throw him out. Can you imagine if you did something evil at home and your dad had to forgive you the first time, but then the next time, if you did it again, you'd get thrown out of the house for good? Could you imagine that? Do you think that's fair? Do you think this man, this son, how old do you think the son was? What kind of evil do you think it was? There's so many questions. I would love to talk with you about this, but think about it, talk with your family about it. The next one I do have pictures for. If a thief steals a cow, a sheep, a donkey, a pig, or a goat, oh, there we are. So if a thief steals any of these animals, then he will have to pay 10 times what it is worth. So let's imagine that a cow, let's pretend these are ancient coins. Let's say a cow costs 3 coins. If you steal a cow, then you have to pay back 10 times what the cow is worth. So you'd have to pay back 30 coins. If you stole a cow, even if a cow's only worth 3 coins, if you stole it, you'd have to pay back all of this instead of just this for stealing it. Do you think that's fair? If, the next part of the rule is, if you can't pay it back, if the thief doesn't have money to pay it back, he will be put to death. Do you think that's fair? So, this next one is the most famous Hammurabi rule. It's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If a man puts out the eye of another man, so let's say these two girls are fighting. This girl knocks out this girl's eye. Well, according to Hammurabi's code, if you knock out someone else's eye, they get to knock out your eye. If this girl knocks out this girl's tooth, then this girl gets to knock out her tooth back. And finally, if he breaks another man's bone, break his own bone. So if this girl breaks that girl's bone, then she gets to break her bone back. So anything you do, according to Hammurabi, if you do something to another person, they should be able to do it back to you. Do you think that's fair? Couple more rules. 3 more. If a doctor operates on a patient, oops, it didn't click. If a doctor operates on a patient and the patient dies, then the doctor's hand will be cut off. Do you think that's fair? Doctor's operating on a patient, trying to help him, trying to save his life, but accidentally kills him. The patient dies in the process. Do you think it's fair that the doctor's arm gets cut off? Why do you think Hammurabi thought the doctor's arm should be cut off? I wonder, do you think that's fair? If a builder builds a house and that house collapses and kills the owner, the builder will be put to death. Do you think that's fair? If this man was building this house, and he built it for the owner, but the house collapsed on the owner, and the owner died. Do you think it's fair that the builder should have to die for his building collapsing on the owner? Our last Hammurabi code I'll read to you for the day. If a robber is caught, if a robber is caught breaking a hole into a house so that he can get in and steal it, so it could be breaking a hole in the house, digging a hole underneath the house, but if he's caught breaking a hole into a house so that he can get in and steal it, he would be put to death in front of the hole. So if the robber gets caught trying to break into the house, breaking a hole, digging it into the ground, breaking a hole into the house, and he gets caught, he'll be put in front of that hole and put to death. Is that fair? You have much to think about. So Hammurabi's code, Hammurabi wanted all his laws to be fair and for the punishment to fit the crime. My challenge for you this week, I want you to think about the rules you have at your house. Is it that you have to help clear the table? You have to clean up your toys after you finish playing with them. You have to make your bed. You have to do your schoolwork when you first wake up. So you have all these rules in your house. Do you have any consequences if you don't follow the rules? Can you think of any consequences that would be fitting, that would be like Hammurabi would say? So I want you to think, what would be a good rule for you to have in your house? For example, if I don't clean up my toys right when my mom asked me to, then what should happen? Should she have to nag you again and again? Or should there be a consequence? Maybe something about losing toy privileges. That sounds like something Hammurabi would do. That seems fair. So I want you to give it some thought and come up with your own Hammurabi code. But this will be the code of you. And you'll write the code of your name in your journal. You're going to come up with your own code for a law in your house that you think will be fair. So I hope you have fun, and we're going to learn more about Hammurabi's code tomorrow.